Good evening. You're watching See You at USC. I'm your host, Daniel DiMaso, and tonight we have USC Athletic Director and Hall of Fame wide receiver Lynn Swann joining us. Stay tuned. You don't want to miss. Hello, welcome back to See You at USC. Again, we have our guest tonight, Lynn Swann. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Yeah, it's great. How are you doing tonight? You said you had a busy day earlier.
Busy day. I get up early in the day and start my morning and with a cup of coffee and driving into USC from Malibu. And there's a little traffic there, but I get in early enough to avoid it.
All right, nothing you couldn't handle, right?
Right.
So I want to go back. You've obviously had a storied career as a wide receiver with the Steelers and with USC as well. I kind of want to take it back. You said your family moved to San Mateo, California when you were really young.
Yes.
Do you remember the first time picking up a football?
The first time I played football was in the park at the San Mateo Park.
Okay.
Just down the street on Mount Diablo Street.
Uh-huh.
And it was usually Sunday afternoons, Saturday afternoons. It was Thanksgiving Day. It was Christmas and showing off your new sneakers. It was Easter, and all those times you get to the park and you have a pickup game with your friends.
Yeah. When did organized football kind of start for you?
When I was 12 years old, and my middle brother, Calvin, I'm the youngest of three, was going out for football, Pop Warner football in San Bruno.
Okay.
And he had to take the bus to get up there. And my mother did not want me to play. And she said I couldn't play. So I snuck out with Calvin, got on the bus, went up there, and tried out for the team.
And you made it, I'm assuming.
I think I got the last uniform.
Okay. You got one of the big jerseys that came down
I
past
think
your
I
knee.
was the original bobblehead football player. Everything was too big. The shoulder pads, the thigh pads, the helmet was too big. Every time I stopped, all of it kept jiggling around.
Were you a late bloomer in terms of height and size and everything, or?
No, I just wasn't very good.
Oh, okay. So when
Daniel, I was bad when I first went out.
I think everybody has to be.
Yeah.
Now, when you came home with your jersey and your pads, what did your mom say?
She didn't say a whole lot. She wasn't happy.
Okay.
But she said, okay, fine, you joined the team, you went out. But one thing you have to remember. I said, what's that? She goes, you can't quit. You decided to go, you made the team, so now you can't quit.
Okay.
And that was it. That's all she said.
And I'm assuming that's something you've kind of carried through into the rest of your work as well.
Well, yeah, because I wanted to quit.
Mantra.
There were times I wanted to quit playing football because it wasn't very good. It wasn't a lot of fun. But I found that I was very competitive. And so I kept trying, trying. And so the very next year, the first year I was a defensive back, and then they put me over the wide receiver, but I didn't play very much. And the next year I became a starting wide receiver for the Pop Warner team. But that wasn't such a big deal because we never threw the ball.
Fair enough. Now, you sort of famously commented that dancing as a kid helped out on the football field. Is that something your mom kind of implemented, her way of letting you play football? Was you had to do?
Implementing is a very kind way of saying it.
Okay.
I was a hyper child, and my mom felt like I needed to be involved in different things.
Okay.
And so she enrolled me in a dance class. And so that's how I got started in the 4th grade.
What kind of dance?
Initially, it was tap dance.
Okay.
Then it morphed into a little bit of jazz and a little bit of ballet. And then when I came to USC, I actually danced in senior programs for the senior dance students who had to put together and choreograph, a show. And so I did those kinds of things.
No, I didn't know that. So what age did those classes start?
4th grade.
4th grade.
Yeah.
What did the other kids on the football team think about Mr. Swann doing dance lessons?
Well, they didn't know that when I played Pop Warner football.
Something you kind of hid.
I kind of hid, but in high school it was like a little different because I'm leaving practice early on some days with a pair of tap shoes and trying to get to practice. So
now, did you ever get anybody else to kind of join in or take classes with you?
No.
Tell them it would help them out.
No, when I first joined my first class, there were 16 kids in the class, and there were 14 girls and 2 boys. And so I like those odds a lot. So I just, left it alone, didn't tell anybody else about the class, and just suffered through it.
Yeah, it was your own little secret. You liked it that way.
Yeah.
How did that when did you start to notice your training in dance affecting your play on the field?
Well, like most things, you don't really notice it right away, but if it's something you've done, you've practiced a long time, it becomes natural to you in terms of how you move. In dance, they teach you the end of one movement is the beginning of the next. So you have that flow. It's seamless, and that's what you're looking for. So when you're running a pass route and you're trying to fake someone out, and you're trying to manipulate them, and you move them to the right, then you move them to the left. That same kind of transition of weight and power is what we used in dance. So I was easily able to run routes very well, have body control, that sense of balance, and then in addition to that, trampoline work, giving me much more body control.
So when you finally came time to pick a college, how did you settle upon USC?
I visited a number of different schools. USC really wasn't on my radar screen initially. But when I came down here, I liked it. I liked the people that were here. I liked the coaching staff that was here. I liked the campus. And so I felt really comfortable and at home at USC. And at the other schools, I didn't feel quite the same kind of comfort level. And so when I was making up my mind, I thought about it in this way. All the schools I'm looking at play great football. Okay, I am going to get a great education at any one of these schools that I go to. So I should go someplace where I feel comfortable, where I feel like I'll fit in, and it has to be my decision, because when things get tough, I'm not going to blame somebody else for me being there. I can only blame myself. So if it's my decision, then I'll work harder at making it the right decision.
Fair enough. During your time here, you got to play for John McKay. Kind of comment on what those years were like playing under, and obviously you guys won a few Rose Bowls, a national championship if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
What was the atmosphere of USC football like in those days?
Well, the atmosphere was very much like it is today here. You've got a winning program. You got people trying very hard, a lot of talent, but coming together as a team. Coach McKay was a very good leader. And he was not a micromanager. He gave the assistants the authority to the coach. He coached the assistant coaches and came up, I think, with the strategies and what the game plans would be. But he was a very interesting guy to work for. He used to drive around the practice field in his golf cart, watching everybody practice. He always had a yellow legal pad with him, and he'd write notes on the yellow pad. He'd give it to the head manager, and the head manager would take it, run it out to the assistant coach. The assistant coach would open it up, read it, crumble it up, stick it in their pocket, and keep coaching. And at some point along the way, whatever he wrote down for them, they either told us, or it could have just been a note that said, meet me for dinner after work. We have no idea.
Sort of that mystery that he kept with him.
Yes.
So kind of comment, I'm very curious, as you did get drafted in the first round by the Steelers, kind of describe what that moment was like in the Swann household when you got that call, when you got your name called on draft day.
Well, it's very different than what you see today. I was at home with my parents in Foster City, California. And we were sitting in the living room. It wasn't a lot of hoopla. I had on sneakers, jeans, and a T-shirt. TV was on. There was a reporter from the San Mateo Times and a photographer. And I was sitting in the chair, and the phone rang, and it was one team saying, "We're thinking about drafting you." I said, "Great." And they said, "Okay, we'll call you back later." I hung up, and they said, "Who was that?" I said, it's the 49ers. They said, "Are you going to play in San Francisco?" I said, "No, they're thinking about drafting me." And they said they'd call back. And then the phone rang again, and it was someone from the Dallas Cowboys. And they said, "We're thinking about drafting you." I said, "Great." They said, "You don't sound very enthusiastic." I said, "Because you're only thinking about drafting me. You haven't drafted me yet." And he said, "Okay," and hung up the phone, and they never called back. And then I got a phone call. Someone said, "I'm so-and-so from the Pittsburgh Steelers. We're thinking about drafting you. Have you signed with anybody else?" I said, "No." They said, "Okay." Hung up the phone. A few minutes later, the phone rang again. It says, "Lynn Swann, congratulations, you're a Pittsburgh Steeler."
Wow.
I said, "Great."
It was that simple.
That simple.
Yeah. Do you remember what either your dad or your mom said to you in those moments following that call?
Well, it's just they looked at me and says, "Well, what do you think?" I said, "Well, Mom, Dad, I don't know much about Pittsburgh. I know they wear black and gold.
Right.
Yeah, and that's good because I think I look good in black and gold. It's a good color. It's not orange and teal." Okay. They've got a couple of good running backs in that team, and a guy named Frank O'Harris. I thought he was Irish, but his first name is Franco, and his last name is Harris, and he's half Italian. And then there was some guy named Mean Joe Green, but I didn't have to worry about him because he was on my team.
Right.
Unlike Dick Butkus, who played for the Bears.
Right.
And he retired that year, which was a good thing for me too.
Yeah. So you obviously went on to have a historic career, 4 Super Bowl wins, the first wide receiver to win a Super Bowl MVP.
True.
Excuse me for tooting your own horn a little bit here. But looking back, is there any advice that you would give to like that 21-year-old kid who got that call? Anything that you would say to yourself?
Well, at that particular time, there's not a whole lot of advice to give to you, to a young man in that position. He's got a number of people around him today. Not just his family and friends, but an agent and a whole host of people who are there to advise him and to help him out. And hopefully he's made a good choice in that agent and those people who are going to advise him. It's still about the performance. It's how you play the game. And if you have the chance of being on a good team, you've got a better chance of winning. If not, you've got a great chance of building a winning culture. But players need to go out and stay focused. Need to stay focused on the job that they're going to do, and then need to find out what they're going to do after it's over. Because regardless of how much money you make, if you play football for 9 years, 10 years, that's a long time.
Right.
Okay? You look at a guy like Tom Brady, who wins 5 Super Bowls.
Yeah.
Okay? Money is not going to be an issue for Tom. He's made a ton of money. Okay? So he'll never have to work for a dollar in his life. Sure. But the question is, what will he do every day when he wakes up when he does retire? What motivates him each day? What gets him out of bed to be productive each day? And that's one of the big problems I think young players will have as they move forward.
Do you remember anybody who sort of steered you in a direction, gave you that advice of make sure you have a plan for when you're done here?
Well, my parents always emphasized education, always emphasized, to set goals. Right. And so that was important. I've had good mentors along the way. Yeah. Dr. Kenneth Aller Smith was a professor and the head of the USC School of Journalism and the School of Public Relations. And that's where I have my degree. He was a great advisor and a great mentor for me when I was here. And along the way, playing football, people who have not been, shall we say, in the world of football have also been great mentors to me in business and in terms of my growth and my development. Right. So I think if you always take the approach that every day you're trying to learn and get better, you're going to learn, you're going to have different experiences, you're going to grow, and you're going to have great opportunities in front of you.
Right. Do you think that, were there any mistakes that you made that you feel set you up for later successes? Any sort of?
Well, you always have to learn from your mistakes, and we all have them. The important thing is to grow from that. I tell the athletes and the young kids, 650 athletes at USC, that they're in their athletic department. Right. And I try and give them a framework, a solid framework. No gray area, just a solid framework. Right. This is right, this is wrong. This is good, this is bad. And the reason why I do that is not that they're not going to make mistakes, but if they make a mistake, they at least know what they have to do to get back inside that framework, to be on the right side of things. Yeah. And it's kind of a hard lesson sometimes to learn, but I think most of us, most young people, when they're 18 to 22 or they're in college and they're experiencing all these different things, they'll make a conscious decision to do something they know is wrong. But if they know it's wrong, they got a chance to get back to the right side. Right. The problem becomes when everything is gray, when you have no defined lines in your life. When you make a mistake, how do you know?
Well, you got to figure it out. We have to go to a commercial break. Stay tuned. We will have more with Lynn Swann when we come back.
Καλώς ήρθες στο Trojan Vision.
掌门版的 Trojan Vision。
欢迎收看 Trojan Vision。
Trojan Vision 환영합니다.
Bem-vindo, Trojan Vision!
Robert Zemeckis Center, home to the award-winning television station Trojan Vision. Here, we foster brilliant students who produce innovative weekly television shows. Our students have won numerous awards in categories like Best Producing, Directing, and Writing. The success of Trojan Vision could not be possible without the creativity, intelligence, and vision of our students. Trojan Vision, award-winning, student-run.
Welcome back to CU at USC. Joining us for the second half is Chris Lopez from the Water Cooler, Trojan Vision's sports television show. And again, Mr. Lynn Swann, thank you again for coming back. So coming off,
I didn't go anywhere. I stayed right here.
Yeah, you did. I was running all over the place. Right. So coming off of a Rose Bowl win, what do you think the football program has to do to improve for next season?
Well, I think what they've done already to improve is have a great recruiting class.
Yeah.
The national letter of intent was open on February 1st. Players signed and committed to schools. The verbal commitments aren't really binding that they give early on, but we had a top 5 in the country recruiting class.
Yes, we did.
And so the coaches are able to fill the gaps where they think they're going to be a little weak or they're missing people. We've got some big wide receivers coming in. We've got some very talented and athletic defensive backs coming in. We've got defensive linemen and offensive linemen that should do well. So the progression is to recruit, and it's like the draft, to get that talent in. And so it looks like we've got a good group coming in for the 2017 season.
Yeah. And I am curious, with a few big pieces leaving, thinking Juju Smith, Adoree Jackson, how do you think, well, one is, how did you advise those student athletes to go ahead and commit to the draft?
Well, we don't advise them to commit to the draft or not to commit to the draft.
Right.
What we try and do for all the athletes who have the potential of going on is get an evaluation from the NFL and let the NFL scouts and let the folks at the NFL tell them where they think they are, where they might come out in the draft. We give them that information. We talk about the pros and cons. You know, they ask any questions they want to ask, and they make up their minds. It's a fine line you have to walk, because if an athlete is a junior and he feels like you convinced him to stay another year and he gets hurt,
he'll remember that.
He'll say, I didn't want to be here anyway, you convinced me to stay. So it's not a conversation where you're trying to convince anyone to stay and you're not trying to push them out the door. But they're at the beginning of making life-altering and changing decisions for themselves. And so this is something they normally talk over with their families, and they discuss and figure out what they want to do.
Well, so as a former star player for USC, and we have someone who I guess mirrors a lot of what you were when you were here in Juju Smith, and then other star players. Do you have any sort of specific relationship with them, or any mentorship where you kind of spoke about your experience with them, and have you sort of helped them along the way going through the process?
Well, the players kind of reach out if they want to reach out. In the world of football and college football, most athletes kind of are closer to their assistant coach. May not be as close to the head coach, even though the head coach may be personable and affable and very open and friendly. They will kind of attach themselves to that assistant coach. For all of our players, my door is open if they want to come in and talk about whatever. but these are young 18 to 22-year-old young men who feel like, this is their time. And so I try and give them the benefit of what I know when they ask. If they don't ask,
And they won't know.
then there's nothing I can tell them, and they'll find out.
I feel. I guess I want to ask, so we talked a little bit about John McKay in the first half, about sort of the atmosphere that he had over the whole football team. From just your year here, what have you seen from the atmosphere that Clay Helton sets, and what's sort of the attitude that he brings to the program?
Clay is much more enthusiastic, and Clay is an integral part of what happens every day at practice, and he runs that practice. Instead of like John McKay kind of on the golf cart kind of riding around, Clay will be out there in shorts running from sideline to sideline, inserting himself into what's going on. He designed the practice, he designed the system in terms of how he wants to practice and what he wants to emphasize, and he's got a game plan. So he's trying to gear the practice around the game plan they want to execute on that weekend for the game. He wears his heart on his sleeves, a very emotional guy. When you talk to him, he kind of grabs you by the soul.
Yeah.
Very enthusiastic, very believable. And every day he practices that when he goes out to that football field. And so the players believe in him. When they take the field, they have the confidence that they can win. They have the confidence they have a game plan that's going to work. And they trust his decisions.
Yeah, well, and that's certainly important to any sports team.
Right.
No, you look at that team, we're 1-3.
Yeah.
And and I've got to follow the letters that alumni and people sent to me.
Yeah. Well, and that's, I feel like, the truest test of character of this team, and attributes really to Clay, is that we were able to turn around from 1-3, where even some of our own had left us for dead.
Sure.
And we were able to really rally, and I think Clay Helton had a lot to do with that and might have been the perfect coach for that situation.
Well, I mean, he held the team together. He kept them focused on what was in front of them, not what was behind them. Okay, we had a perfect record at home.
Yeah.
Made a few changes. And certainly players lived up to their billing in terms of their talent and so forth. Sam Darnold had a wonderful year as a freshman quarterback at USC and made a difference in the offense and how we performed. Our defense stepped up. Clancy Pendergast did a great job with the defensive talent we had here, getting him in the right place at the right time. And they grew. They got better. And that's what coaching is all about. And so even in games we won, they would go back to the drawing board and say, okay, how can we improve? How can we get better? What do we have to do against this next team in order to win? Yeah. And we ended up in the Rose Bowl.
Right.
Pretty
with
good
with a little help from Washington and Colorado.
I'm curious, after that 1-3 start, what were the conversations like with the coaching staff? I know I read your piece in the LA Daily News about staying patient and letting them kind of do their own thing, letting their system develop. But what was your sort of position? How did you feel coming into the season with a rough start?
Well, when you start 1-3, it's you're just 1-3.
Right.
You sit down, and Clay and I talk every week at Mondays. We have a meeting. We kind of go over a number of things that are going on. I ask questions about decision-making process, what's happening. He tells me what they've been doing, what they've been thinking about, how he wants to attack the next team and move things forward. And I think you have to be patient. You can't just, react to everything, every little thing that goes on. And the alumni are very excited. They want to win all the time. And you look at it 1-3, and they're sitting there going like, okay, why are we 1-3?
Yeah.
And people are sending me notes saying, don't make the mistake the other guy made. Don't wait so long to pull the trigger. I mean, so that's the kind of mail you get. Now, on one hand, it's not great, and you've got that kind of pressure. I don't feel that kind of pressure. I'm pretty comfortable with the decisions I make. I think Clay's a good person. He's trying to do the right thing. And you've got to have patience, give him a chance to be the head coach you think he can be.
Right.
And, let him recruit more players and see where he goes. And so he wins the next game. He gets a little bit better. He continues to improve and get better and better.
Is there ever a moment there where you think, like, this could be really bad? This could really go downhill this year?
No,
or did you kind of...
When you're 1-3, you're thinking you're already downhill.
Right.
Okay, but are you going to find a way to climb back up to the top? And Clay found a way to get back to the top.
Right.
Awesome. Well, I guess speaking of a program that has definitely improved a lot over the last year, as well as the basketball team, looking tremendous this year. I wanted to ask, sort of, especially in relation to Clay Helton, Andy Einfield's really brought a great attitude to that program and has really brought a lot of talent and a lot of sort of diverse athletes. What does a good basketball team mean for USC, something that we have not always had, and does it kind of like change the, I guess, climate, the athletic climate on campus, and how does that feel from the athletic office?
I think it would be great, to get our basketball team back on that winning track, and certainly Andy did a good job last year. They were in the NCAA tournament, and he'd like to go back there again this year and do better than just the first round loss.
Yeah.
His basketball team was undefeated going into the Christmas holidays.
Right, yes.
First time he's ever had an undefeated team going into the Christmas break.
Yeah.
Okay, and they've played some great games. They had a tremendous win against UCLA.
Yes, it was.
Okay, so I think this is a good basketball team. I think Andy's an excellent coach and he's doing a great job. What will it mean to USC if he turns it around? I think a lot more enthusiasm for the basketball program. As we've seen with football this year, a great season by the football team translates into a great recruiting class. If Andy can get this team into the tournament and do well, a great season will translate into a better recruiting offseason for him and getting more talent in and continuing to build. Andy is a very talented and a very good coach. If he can get the right talent, I think he can win.
Yeah, and we're hoping for another playoff berth there. Let's switch over to the women Trojan. Have had a insurgence of energy. Our women's soccer team coming off a championship last year. The lacrosse team lost in the quarterfinal in an overtime match. Gussie Johns, the goalie, just got nominated, first USC Trojan to be taken to the U.S. national team.
National team, yeah.
Sarah Hughes, Kelly Clays, doing great. Pac-12 championship.
Oh, look,
undefeated.
We have 21 sports here.
Right.
Our men's and women's sports are phenomenal. Anna Collier in beach volleyball. There's 2 back-to-back sand volleyball, beach volleyball championships. So we've got a lot of talent here. Kadani did a great job. Kadani came in here and took 3-4 years, built this soccer team up, and took them to a championship. I was there. I don't know who was more excited, the girls or me, to be there as the athletic director in my first national championship as athletic director, and having nothing to do with it at all. But
you're fine to take credit for it, though.
I was the guy in charge, and I was there, so it's great. But excited for the girls. I remember what it was like to win a national championship as a football player here at USC, and to really want them to have that opportunity to experience that.
Yes. Well, we're glad, and we hope we get a lot more from you. We have to go. That's all the time we have. Thank you so much again for joining us, and thank you, Chris. This has been See You at USC. Join us next week. Thank you. Good night.
Fight on.